Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another Luxury Rental Doctor Show. I am Dr. Rachel Gainsbrugh, your host, here to help busy, burnt out professionals like yourself reduce burnout and build financial freedom through luxury and mid-term rental investing. I am so excited for our guest today, a friend and a guest, Sarah Weaver. Sarah is incredible. She is all about lifestyle investing. She's got an incredible story. She travels all over the world. She's a digital nomad, real estate investor with 19 rentals across 4 states. We actually were in the green room a moment ago and we are talking about how fun it is to shoot it up about the business side of things, not just real estate. And so I'm so grateful to have someone that I can share transparently what our numbers are looking like in our other businesses. And so, Sarah, I'm so excited to dive in with you today. And we're just going to go a little bit off script, but I would love for you to tell the people a little bit about yourself, please, my friend.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Rachel, thank you so much for having me. It is so fun that we have become such good friends, of course, through real estate, but then I think solidified in all of our business chats. And
Yep.
so yeah, I am a digital nomad. So for those of you that don't know, that just is a fancy way of saying homeless. So my friends are trying to get me to coin homeless homeowner, and I said, yeah, but that doesn't look very good in my dating profile. So I don't know. And so I have been traveling full time. It'll be 5 years in January, which is just unreal. I set out when I was 29. I said, oh, surely by the time I'm 30, I'll get another mortgage, maybe a boyfriend, start to settle down. Well, I just got a lot more mortgages and visited a lot more countries and have been building businesses and building my portfolio while on the road.
That's awesome. So take us back a little bit before we head directly into what we want to talk about. But take us back a little bit to where you were when you first got the spark or the idea. You know what? I really want to do something outside of the 9 to 5. I want to get started with real estate. What was that catalyst for you?
Yeah, well, I knew I wanted something outside the 9 to 5 from very early on. I have a degree in international studies and journalism because I wanted to be an international journalist. Rachel, when little kids like dressed up at school as like what they wanted to be, maybe
Mhm.
some dressed up as like a football star and wore like a Chiefs jersey because I grew up in Kansas City. Some girls
Ooh.
dressed up as teachers because they wanted to be teachers or nurses or doctors or lawyers. I had a pencil behind my ear and a reporter notebook. Like I've
Oh,
wanted to be a journalist since I was 8 years old. I thought it looked fun. It was not the 9 to 5. Turns out it's actually just 9 to 9 or 7 to 10. Turns out you're just on all the time as a journalist, which
yeah.
actually isn't that different from a real estate investor now that I say it out loud. And so I always knew I wanted something different. But unfortunately, I learned that journalism wasn't it.
Mm.
It wasn't what I thought it was. You weren't getting paid very well. You were working really long hours. And more importantly, what you put out was not what ends up being published. And
Oh,
so it was a bit of a demoralizing industry. And also, it was just bad timing. Like, had I been born 15 years earlier, I could have just been a good storyteller. But now you have to be a good storyteller, a good videographer, a good tweeter, a good all these things. And it's really,
mm.
really demanding. And the people that are doing really well, I mean, they're incredibly multifaceted and talented. And it wasn't in the cards for me. And so thankfully I learned really early on and I pivoted and I taught English in South Korea was like my I don't know what to do, what should I do? And thankfully I had some peers that had done that. And it's a really good thing to do, like they call it as like your gap year. So it turns out I was
Mm.
teaching English in Korea with frankly a lot of people like me, overachievers, 3 on the Enneagram, like very workaholic type people. They were teaching English because it was going to look good on their pre-med or pre-law resume,
Oh.
but I learned while I was there, I was like, no, I don't. I don't think I want to work this hard. Not because I'm lazy. You guys will hear how many businesses I've started and all the work that I do, but I didn't want to follow academia and like a path where I'd
Yeah.
be reporting to somebody else. And so thankfully, I found real estate, and I thought I'd have to do another job alongside investing in real estate. And I just thought I'd buy one house every year for 10 years and voila, you could be done. But it turned out a little different than that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is good. I feel like for you, the catalyst is the same for many of us. Like we wanted to report to ourselves, we wanted
Mhm.
to work on our own time, on our own dime. So for you, you're like, I don't want another boss. I just don't.
Mhm.
And so good for you. So tell me, what did that look like? That very first investment that you purchased.
Yeah, it's an investment strategy that I recommend to so many people, no matter if you're unmarried like me or you have kids like Rachel, or if you have 10 dogs. I cannot recommend this strategy enough. House hacking. I
Mm,
cannot recommend house hacking enough. It's not the most convenient. It's definitely a practice of delayed gratification, but I just cannot recommend it enough. So that's exactly what I did. I bought a single family with 3% down. My
love
down
it.
payment was $7,000 because it was a tiny little $200,000, $217,000 single family. And then I just filled the rooms with roommates. And then I became the best roommate because the best roommate is someone that pays rent, where in this case, I paid the mortgage and they paid me, and is never there. And so I learned really early on that, hey, I have the ability to work remotely, and so I just was gone all the time. I was in South America, I was in Europe, and I thought, ooh, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to buy a house every year or two and then just travel the world. And here we are.
Love that. So you are the best-selling author of the 30 Day Stay book published by Bigger Pockets, where you talk about a midterm rental strategy. So
Yes.
what was that transition from the house hack being the roommate, the best roommate, to the midterm rental strategy?
Yeah, so in that kind of 3 year time span, I picked up a duplex where I
Mhm.
lived in one side. I had a roommate because your girl's really frugal and delayed gratification is real. Then I had a tenant on the other side, and they completely paid the mortgage. So actually, the roommate's rent was just cash in my pocket. And then I picked up a third property, and with that third property, I knew I wanted to furnish at least some of the units. So it actually was a fourplex. And my thought was, well, I obviously have to furnish the unit that I'm going to live in, and then I'll just post it on Airbnb on the weekends. But my second inquiry was someone that wanted to stay in my unit all summer. And I was like, I mean, where am I gonna live? And then I started daydreaming, like, ooh, I'm gonna live in Portugal, I'm gonna live in Mexico. And more or less that's how it happened. But I do want to backtrack a little bit. There was a lot of intentionality with that third property. I was very familiar with furnished rentals. I was very familiar with
Mm.
the area. I specifically bought this building because it was near a large hospital complex. And in my travels, actually, Rachel, that's how I knew about travel nurses, is while I was
Mm.
backpacking South America in 2016, I met a bunch of travel nurses. And what they would do is they'd pick up a 13-week contract, then maybe they'd pick up another one, but then they would take time off and they'd go backpacking. And so I actually like partied in Minca, Colombia with some travel nurses, and they were telling me, I was like, cool, like, where do you live? There's not hostels in the US. And they were like, oh, we just live in Airbnbs. And so years later, when I got serious
Mm.
about real estate investing, I still remembered that conversation that I had in probably a drunken stupor in a hostel. And I was like, that is my ideal tenant.
Okay, okay. I love this so much. And so how did that come to fruition? So you had that individual who wanted to rent out your place for the summer. Was that a travel nurse or was that a different type of avatar or different type of guest profile, so to speak?
Yeah, she wasn't a travel nurse. But
Mhm.
she did work in the hospital. So more or less, she
Oh,
was
okay.
some type of research intern.
Yeah.
and at that hospital that I specifically, invested nearby. And from there, I realized that I could continue to get inquiries from travel nurses, not only on Airbnb, but also on Furnish Finder. And fast forward 3.5, almost 4 years later, and I am almost 85% travel nurses. I am 100% booked through Airbnb or Furnish Finder. I'm about 50-50 between the two of them. And that really has been my avatar ever since.
Love that. Love that. Okay, so what does it look like as you continue to expand your portfolio? What did it take to get to that second, that third, that fourth deal, Sarah?
Yeah, so for those of you familiar with house hacking, you can do this every year, every 2 years, about 9 to 10 times, and then you have 10 conventional loans, and you've filled all of your slots. And so that really was like part of my plan. Is I thought, oh, I'll just do this every year or two. But what happens when you really dedicate your time to real estate investing is you start getting sent good deals. And when you close on a deal and you're, obviously such a joy to work with, the real estate
Mhm.
agents are sending you deals. And
Yeah.
so that's exactly what was happening is I was getting these deals and I'm like, oh gosh, I have to figure out how to do this. And so I really just went all in on books and podcasts. And so it's really, really incredible. Thank you for mentioning the book. I mean, it really is amazing that I'm now a published author with Bigger Pockets because I started out as a Bigger Pockets listener and a Bigger
Mhm.
Pockets reader. And that really it was a lot of self-education. And then I started joining masterminds. And I had some incredible coaches along the way, and they started teaching me other financing strategies. So after house hacking 3 times, I really wanted to buy the fourplex next door to my fourplex. But how was I going to do it? I had no idea. And so thankfully, I'd been posting on Instagram, which is a great tip for any of your listeners. Even if you're at the beginning, like people love the beginning part of your journey, right? And I started posting on Instagram and I gained enough, attention from my peers that they started asking, what are you doing? I'm sure, Rachel, it's the same thing with you. People are like, what are you doing with this real estate thing? It seems like it's really working. And I was able to say, yeah, it's really working. And actually, do you want to partner on a deal?
Mm.
You bring the down payment. I found the deal. I will furnish the deal and I'll manage the property and we'll split everything. And so that's exactly what I did with the property next door. And so now I have two fourplexes next door to each other. All 8 units are furnished. They're all filled with, MTR guests, most of them being these travel medical professionals. But at the same time, I got sent a perfect BRRRR. And for those of you who don't know, that means you're going to buy it, renovate it, rent it out, and then go to the bank and say, please, please, can we refinance it? And in a perfect BRRRR, you're going to get all your money back. And so I got sent what I thought might be a perfect BRRRR. And I said, okay, I'm going to try this strategy. And so in doing so, I used private money and hard money for the first time in a market I had never been to, Des Moines, Iowa, and it was
Oh.
terrifying. And I can now say that it worked. It was a near perfect BRRRR. I think I left about 11,000 in each building. So about 22,000 I own two duplexes, so 4 units. But it's a great story to tell. But let me tell you, in the middle of it, I was waking up at 3 a.m. panicking. I was crying. It was really scary. But I think the important thing is that I was scared, but I did it anyway.
So for those who may not be familiar with the risk profile of the burr,
Oof.
what was scary to you about it?
Yeah, so for anyone that's seen any type of, HGTV show, you know that renovations can take longer. Disaster, you open a wall up and, something bad is inside and it's going to cost more money. And not only does time cost money because I mean, all of the money that you're using is you're paying interest on. And we're
Yeah.
not talking, 3%. We're talking 12, 15% interest.
Yeah.
So it's costing you money every month to even have the money, and then you're spending money on the renovation. And so there's a lot of money going out the door. And if all of the units are being renovated, guess what? You have no money coming in. And
Yeah.
so it was really scary. What if I did my numbers wrong? What if my renovation was going to cost more, take longer? And then the scariest part, because it feels so out of your hands, what if my after repair value, or what I think the house is worth after I, do all these incredible renovations, what if I was wrong? Or what if I get an appraiser that's having a bad day and the appraisal comes in low? Then what do you do? Then you're going to have to leave money in the deal. And it really is, there's about 10,000 ways I feel like it can go wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really proud to say that other than having to yell at my contractor, Mike, we were pretty much on time. We really were, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, that hard money lender allowed me to have a 3-month seasoning. So for
Okay.
those of you that don't know, a lot of banks want you to have held the property for 6 months because it's seen as less risk to the bank. So they
Yeah.
call that like 6 month seasoning. I like to call it marinating because I'm from Kansas City. We like barbecue. So,
Mm.
and thankfully they allowed me to do a 3 month seasoning. And so my timeline actually was good. My renovation was within $3,000 of budget, which is unbelievable.
Unheard
And
of.
and then it appraised 5,000 and 10,000 over what I had punched in. And so it really was.
For those who are listening, I have a bell. Like I'm ready to ring this
Ring
bell.
that bell. Yeah.
Listen, yes,
Yeah.
that's
And
amazing.
it was such a win, and I'm so
Mhm.
proud of myself. And I really have to shout out, like, the real MVPs is my accountability group. And so, like I
Mm.
mentioned, I was in a coaching program, and I had an accountability group that I would meet with every other week. And oh man, I wanted to quit. I wanted to terminate. I was like, I'm just going to cancel the contract. I don't think I can do it. And they were like, you have to do it. Because to add to the story, that second fourplex that I bought, I went under contract on that during renovation. So I had,
Mm.
in 90 days, I had acquired 4 buildings, which was 11 units.
Wow.
And I'm
Goodness
just and I'm just
gracious.
a girl, you guys. Like, I'm just a girl.
Listen. You are the woman. Listen, I love that. I love that. And so what I love about your strategy, not only are you building a real estate portfolio, but you're leveraging that to help you to create a life and a lifestyle of your dreams, of our dreams, right? Many
Hmm.
of our listeners are sitting here right now and they're dreaming of the type of lifestyle that you have created. So what's interesting is while we're in the green room, we're chatting up about, real estate affords this opportunity to tinker around with other projects as well.
Hmm.
So let's paint the picture of what has the last year looked like for Sarah Weaver in terms of your traveling escapades, and what are some side projects that you're working on? Let's just dive into that, lady.
Yeah, so I really took being a digital nomad very seriously this year. For those of you that don't know, on a personal level, last year I had 2 surgeries. And so
Yeah.
it just grounded me longer than I had planned. And so I think it like reignited, like, ooh, I have to travel. I have the travel bug. And so I told myself my number one goal this year, 2024, is to speak. I'm going to speak as much as I can because of the book and because of podcast guesting, like this incredible podcast. I have really like started to tell my story in a way that people are like, okay, if this girl can do that, surely I can buy a rental property, is really my hope. That's really, at the end of the day, I hope when I get off stage, people are like, well, if that girl can do it, surely I can do it. Or they are like, okay, she's right. I need to function in the fear. And so
Yeah.
I really set out this
Mm.
year to share that message. And be careful what you wish for, because I haven't calculated how many speaking gigs I've had, but it has to be more than 25. But I did tell Rachel right before we started, I did calculate how many times I've switched accommodation I had to really be careful, by the way, of how we say this. This is not how many beds I slept in. That sounds like a whole different statistic. But how many times I switched Airbnbs or switched hotels. We're only, what, 47 weeks into the year, and I've switched accommodation 105 times in 2024.
Goodness. Let
So
that breathe for a second, woman. Oh my gosh.
So I'm a little tired. And for those of you that are wondering, like, what on earth is she doing? Well, I would go and I'd speak at a conference, and then I'd get on a plane and I'd go fly wherever the heck I wanted. And so I spontaneously went to Greece with a friend of mine who she and I actually started a business together, which we'll talk about in a second.
Mm.
I spontaneously went to Thailand and stayed for 3 weeks. And so, because of the real estate and because of the businesses, I can say yes to things that there's no way I would have been able to say yes to this 5 years ago.
I love I love that. I absolutely love that. And what you're doing with the speaking, you're sharing, you're providing such an amazing service. I know you have a coaching and a mentorship program. I call it meaningful work. You're doing meaningful work, you're making meaningful money, and you are creating that meaningful life that so many of us have craved. And so let's talk about it. What's the life, the day in the life of Sarah Weaver? What goes on behind the scenes? What are some of those businesses that you have launched and have explored and kicked around? What's working now? What's not working? Let's talk about it, woman.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I want everyone to take away from this is that I recognized a challenge in the
Mm.
market and I thought of a solution. And so that's how this
Mm.
first business came about. So I own a company, ARIA Design Services, and we serve real estate investors by furnishing their Airbnbs or furnished rentals anywhere in the country. So let's say that, you're in Rachel's program and you're a busy physician and you just bought a luxury furnished rental 3 4 states over, and you're like, I can't fly there, and like I'm not going to schlep furniture together. Or
Mm.
you're like, I'm not good at that. Like, I'm not, design is not, I'm good at, with sutures. I am not good with paint swatches, right? And so those are the kind of people that we serve. And so I put together a team, and my team will fly to that property and put it together
Mm.
for you. And we are investors first and
Yes.
designers second. And so, as much as I would love to spend, 80 grand and have Moroccan poofs and all these things, we are looking at it as an investor. And so, I'm even saying things like, okay, while I want art in that place, that's actually not even going to get photographed. And so, we're going to place the art here because it's visually appealing and it's going to be photographed. We need this chair because not only is it going to photograph well, but it's actually super comfortable. And for the types of guests that you're having, like let's say a travel nurse, they're going to actually like sitting in it and want to stay. And so
Mm.
we're not putting, couches that look nice but are uncomfortable, but we're also not spending 4 grand on a couch because we are investors before we're designers. And that business has served over 75 investors in 11 states.
Nice.
And it's been really fun because not only is it fun to, of course, go shopping and spend people's money, but we've actually helped some people build a real estate portfolio where they can quit their job. And so I've actually had some ARIA clients call me and say, like, I did it. Like, I'm full-time real estate investing now.
That's amazing. So that was amazing how you opened up by telling us you're solving a problem in the marketplace. How did you develop your team, form the team that goes out and helps support that business, Sarah?
Yeah, so I read a book called Who Not How, and
Mm.
I highly recommend it for anyone thinking about having their own business or anyone interested in business. And the premise is I didn't need to know how to do this. I needed
Mm.
to figure out who do I need to hire, and they can figure out how to do this. And so funny that I already mentioned the hostel. I met a girl at a hostel in Indonesia, in Bali, Indonesia, years ago, and we just stayed in touch. And she has a brilliant mind, not only for business but more importantly design. And
Mm.
unlike me, she's incredibly patient and pragmatic. Two things that I'm working on. And thanks to her, I've really improved. Um, and so she was it for me. I called her. I was like, hey, I have this idea. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I can
Mhm.
offer. And she said, great, I'm in. And I obviously like her so much because that's the business partner that I went to Greece with spontaneously. And you better believe that, that was a business trip.
All day, every day. Yes. Okay, so but she's in Indonesia. How
No,
does
so
she does that
yep,
okay.
no, so like me, she's a digital nomad, and so
Ah,
by the time I
okay.
called her, she was actually traveling the U.S. in her RV, and
Ooh.
while she was traveling in her RV, working some contract jobs, she got a call back from her old boss before she went traveling, and now she is a very important person at a very important company in New York City, and so I always say she has like a big girl job. And so her and I we're doing ARIA on the nights and weekends or whenever we can
Mhm,
squeeze in. And then as far as who's going to the properties, I'm really lucky with
mhm.
all these speaking gigs. I get so many people that come up to me after I speak and they say, "Oh my gosh, I would love to do what you do." Or they're like, "Oh, I love designing. I'd love to work for ARIA." I go, "Great." And then I called them and like, "Hey, do you want to get flown to Michigan?" And usually they say yes, and they last about, 4 to 5 furnishing gigs, and then they're like, "Oh, this is actually not very fun."
Oh my
So
god,
it's a lot of
HGTV lied to us.
it's a lot of
HGTV,
work.
listen, it is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Take it from someone who furnished their first properties themselves. Yes, it is a lot.
Oh, Rachel, I'm still furnished. I own this company. I'm still furnishing my own by myself. Like, what am I doing?
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, that company's been such a joy because not only is it incredibly profitable, but I get to work with people that I like. Like, jokes aside about people, dropping out after first a couple gigs, these are investors that I enjoy, when we're done putting things together, we're excited to grab a drink and sit down, and usually we're just sitting on the floor in our sweatpants, just talking about life and talking about investing, and these are people that I want to spend life with. And so I think that if you guys are going to get anything from this podcast, it's build a company where you're solving a good problem and you're
Mm,
working with people that you enjoy.
mm. So true. So
Hmm.
true. Now you have a couple of other businesses as well. Let's dish it out,
Yes.
woman.
Yeah, so you mentioned the coaching program and the mentorship is
Mhm.
definitely what brings me the most joy,
Mm,
which is great because it is the one that's also the most profitable, and and I think it's the one that has the most impact. I think that
mm,
when you can really walk alongside someone who they've raised their hand, they've said, "Hey, I really want to invest in real estate." Maybe they heard me on a podcast like this, and they're like, "Yeah, but how?" Or "I'm scared," or "I
yeah.
think this is a good deal, but." And so
Mhm.
the coaching program is really there for these investors to walk alongside them. And I'm not above. I will hold your hand through the whole process. And then what's really cool about real estate investing is that you might have 10 questions before you learn how to analyze. Well, then you're going to have 10 different questions once you have a deal. Once you go under contract, then there's 10 different questions. And so I love the challenge of it. Like, I love that every client is different, every personality is
Mm,
different. You're working through a lot of limiting beliefs, sometimes even a little bit of trauma, and just
mhm,
really helping people like see the light at the end of the tunnel. And most of them actually have the greatness inside of them. They just need to give themselves permission to let that
mm.
greatness come to. And I think that that is what I'm most proud of.
I love that. I love that. Now, from a marketing perspective, do you find that the vast majority of your members are joining you from your speaking gigs, social media, I'm sure the book that's your bestseller? Where would you say the majority of your lead flow is coming in?
Yeah, I know that a lot of them hear me on a podcast and
Mhm.
then start following me on social media. And
Mhm.
then if they did attend, really, if they attended any conference in 2024, I was probably there because I went to every conference. But I think it's a long game, right? Like
Yeah.
your coaching program, my coaching
Oh, yeah.
program, it's not $1,000, right? This is an
Yeah.
investment. And I
Mhm.
think that they do need to meet you and hear from you. And they need to say, I really like Sarah's vibe
Yeah.
over somebody else's.
Yeah.
Or I think that like what I need from a coach, Sarah has.
Yeah.
Or maybe that life that I'm looking for, like I really want to buy enough rentals to then travel. So I am
Mhm.
going to join Sarah's coaching program. I don't think that they hear from me and sign up 3 days later. I do think that
Right.
they've heard from me at that point, probably about 5 times, whether it be an Instagram reel or on a podcast or from stage. They've probably
Mhm.
heard from me a few times.
Yeah, I saw that Google had published something, the 7-11-4 rule, where they say that in order for someone to buy from you, whether it's booking your property or joining a program, a mentorship like Sarah's or mine, they need to have consumed 7 hours of your content over the course of 11 touch points over the course of 4 different mediums. That could be email, live speaking, social media, podcasts. So those are the four. So 7-11-4. I don't know how true it is for the different industries, but that's what level sets me, Sarah. Whenever I think, oh, you know what, I'm just saying the same thing over and over again. However, someone who's new to me, they're just hearing it for the first time. And
Yeah.
so it's okay to continue the same messaging because it's who I am, it's my truth.
Well, I think it's so important for us
Hmm.
entrepreneurs to hear that
Yeah.
because I actually had a meeting. I'm in a mastermind with some finance coaches. So I'm
Oh,
I'm the real estate coach. They teach, the stock market and finance and all these and retirement accounts. And we were talking, and I think that one of them was getting pretty frustrated. She's like, I do these webinars and then people don't sign up.
yeah.
And I had to remind her, which I have to remind myself all the time, that is not people saying, I don't like you, Sarah. It's not people saying, Rachel, you're not good enough, right?
Yeah.
It's just saying that, hey, I haven't heard enough. And now I have, thank you, Rachel, some metrics. Like I haven't heard 7 hours at 11 different touch points on 4 mediums. Like I only
Yeah.
attended your one webinar. I'm not ready to swipe my credit card yet. But I
Yeah.
think as an entrepreneur, it's so easy to be like, I'm a failure. I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
They don't like me as much as the other people. Like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
But the reality is like we just have to keep showing up because
Yeah.
I know in sharing my story that it is slowly helping people realize like, okay, I mean, I think I can do it because
Mhm.
I really believe that anyone can do this. It's just you do have to be brave.
Yeah.
It's not for the weak or the meek. Real estate investing is a little scary.
It sure is. It sure is. And starting any business is a little bit scary, right? I think there's 9%, according to the data, only 9% of individuals venture to open a business versus the 91% decide, you know what, I'm just going to stick to the W 2
Hmm.
for that security. So we're the ones, guys. We're the ones who have ditched perfectionism,
Yep.
ditched analysis paralysis, jumped out of the plane head first, and we're putting the parachute together as we go. So,
We really are. And then I got asked so many times about travel.
mhm,
Sarah, I love that you travel. I want to
yeah.
travel. And so my entrepreneur brain went, okay, what do I do? Do I make a course on how to quit your job? Do I
Mm,
sling credit card links for affiliate income? Or I was
yeah.
like, what do I do? And what I realized in attending all of these conferences is
Hmm.
that the magic happens in what I call the hallway conversations. So
Mm,
while I hope that they're getting, brilliant things when someone like Dr. Rachel or I are speaking on stage, but I know the magic actually is
mhm,
when they talk to somebody in the hallway or they, have a conversation like, hey, how did you finance that, boutique hotel or
mhm,
whatever the questions that they're able to ask in those hallway conversations. And then I recognized that like my, like I call them my conference wives that like always are like, they never leave my side. And I'm always, and I know their elevator pitch and their intro just as well as I know mine. And what I realized is that they're introverts. That's why they're standing next to me. They're like, yeah, Sarah, you're our extrovert. And so I really started to think, I think I'm onto something. I think that
Oh.
there's a space in the market for
Mm-hmm.
small scale events because I
Oh.
think that real estate investors are really craving, these intimate conversations where they feel safe to be like, hey, I am too embarrassed to admit, but I actually don't know how to analyze a deal. Or,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I have bought this and I honestly like don't even know if it's doing well. Like, can you help me? And I
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of shame around, not knowing, or especially when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to money and investing. And then you sprinkle in some introverts that are like, well, I'm not going to say anything. And
Yeah.
so that is how Invested Adventures was born. I took my love of people and my love of travel, and now I host small scale events for real estate investors all over the world.
I love that. And I know that we're heading where to the African safari next year, right?
Yeah,
Is
we're
that
going
Tanzania?
to Tanzania for
Uh,
9 day safari, followed by people hiking Kilimanjaro, which I
oh,
did last summer. So I will wave them goodbye and go to Zanzibar. Um, but I can tell you, if you are a hiker and you want to have a challenge of your life, um,
mm.
give Kilimanjaro a try. It was so hard and so cool, and I'm so proud to say that I summited the tallest mountain in Africa.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it was so hard. Oh, I could cry even thinking about it. It was so hard.
Oh my goodness. So much adventure, woman. Goodness gracious. So here's what I'll ask you though. I know that you've gotten an opportunity to, experience quite a bit, but every journey does have its challenges. Can you share a pivotal lesson that you've learned or a difficult experience that may have not gone the way you had expected that kind of shape your approach to real estate to life?
Yeah, I think that just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. And
Okay.
so just because I can, fly from one conference to another and start another business or take on another client doesn't mean that you should. And so I know
Mm.
that your podcast is geared to help out burnt out professionals. And I have to admit, this year I was burnt out. And I
Mm.
would joke with my European friends. So I have a friend who lives in the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands, there's actually paid leave for burnout. And so she was able to
Oh.
like go to her HR department, go through some, HR interviews, and they determined, yes, you are in fact burnout. And she got paid leave. And so I joked with her. I was like, well, in America, we don't have the privilege of being burnt out. And so there was no time for burnout.
Yeah.
And obviously, we laughed together and then maybe cried together. But what she said is, she goes, actually, that is what you can do, is you actually do have the privilege of taking a step back
Mm.
and like practicing saying no. And so that's what I did this year, even though, yes, I spoke at so many conferences.
Mhm.
I served less clients,
Mm.
and it was really good for me, and it
Yeah.
was really good for my business partner, and it was the break that I needed. And I was able to take a step back and really see like which one of my clients are thriving, both from
Mm.
Invested Adventure, the travel company, and the mentorship program, my coaching company, and say, okay, let's just do more of that. Let's do more of the
Mm.
really good work. And so, those are throwing in some more one on one calls and
Yeah.
putting together some forms where there's consistency with the check-ins, right? Not
Mm.
not just like, hey, or how's your goals going, but
Yeah.
actually having a form to fill out to
Mm.
where it's like, hey, Jennifer, you said you were going to do that. Why didn't you do it? Well, that's a
Yeah.
lot easier to do when there's some consistency, and it takes a lot of the burden off of me to memorize, 45 students' goals. And
Yeah.
so I think that taking a step back and saying no
Mm-hmm.
is how I recovered from burnout. And I'm really proud to say that I feel as though I have recovered. And more importantly, I can see the signs so that I can avoid it in the future.
Love that. Love that. This was so good. So, what does your team look like these days, Sarah?
Yeah, so for Invested Adventures, it is
Mhm.
me and a VA, and we learned that we love working with tour operators. So
Oh,
I
mhm.
am no longer the one, calling Billy the driver and making dinner reservations and ordering,
Mm.
everything. We are using a tour operator for especially these large
Mm.
scale events. I took 11 people to Antarctica earlier this year. So of course we went through a tour operator. And so
Love
Invested
that.
Adventures is just me and one Filipino VA. And I would love an intern. So if anyone wants to be an unpaid intern and go on cool trips, feel free to message me.
Mm.
And then I have had the pleasure of hiring some really great videographers and photographers as contract workers for those trips. But otherwise, I keep that team really lean. ARIA Design is me and then my business partner, Kendra, who lives in New York. And then
Mhm.
we have about 7 people that we contract throughout the US. Basically, when we get a job, we call them. We say, "Hey, we have a furnishing gig in Ohio. Do you want it?" And thankfully, a lot of them say yes. And then we have a Filipino assistant or a virtual assistant helping us with that. And then my mentorship company is a marketing contractor,
Mm.
a social media team, also out of the Philippines.
Oh.
And I did have a copywriter, but I took a step back just so I could kind of
Mhm.
get back to it being in my voice. And
Yeah.
and so again, it's just me and one Filipino VA. So it's a pretty
And
lean team.
and a social media team, though, you said.
Yes, yep. There's a social media team, and they are posting, I believe, 3 days a week.
Nice.
And I am the problem. They're asking for more photos and more content, and you better believe I have tens of thousands of photos and
Yeah.
content, but I'm just really bad at slowing down and sitting down and sending it to them. And
Yeah.
so I have a lot of room for improvement when it comes to social media.
Story of my life. I actually have a big meeting tomorrow with my team about social media. So I'm doing this for my own curiosity, not just for the audience. I'm being a little bit greedy with the
Yeah,
conversation.
well, more than happy to put you in contact with the social media team. I think that they're brilliant, and I owe them, a lot of information. And so, ask me in 3 to 4 months. And listeners, I don't know when this will air, but tell me if my Instagram is terrible. I welcome the feedback, or if it's awesome and I sound as energetic and bubbly on Instagram as I do on this podcast, then I'm doing my job right, because that was the feedback, Rachel, is I had someone tell me, they go, you're when we meet you in person, you're just like this, ray of sunshine and energy, and we don't know how you do it because we know you just got off a plane from London. But your Instagram like is really boring. They're like, we don't see you, we
Yeah.
don't see your face, and I'm like, yeah, you don't see my face because I'm so not I'm not self-conscious anymore. I'm definitely over that, but it
Mhm.
doesn't feel natural to talk to the camera.
Yeah.
And I say that because I think when I say it, people are like, wait, what? You like talk on stage? And
Yeah.
frankly, I talk all the time. If anyone's ever ran into me anywhere, I love to talk. But there's something about talking to a camera that is so different. They're not laughing at my jokes. They're not, vibing off of my energy. And so I just don't love it. I don't love it.
Yeah. It's difficult. I think it's kind of a you gotta get trained for a little bit, like media training, I
Yes.
feel like, yeah.
Yes.
I just do it, sometimes I'm looking I don't know where I'm looking, if I'm looking at the right place or not, sometimes I'm over here or over there, but you know what? At the end of the day, I tell myself, no matter, how great I show up on camera, at the end of the day, as long as one person feels inspired on their
Hmm.
journey to financial freedom, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, I'm gonna remember those words in your voice next time I'm tasked with talking to my camera.
Well, there you have it, folks. We have covered some amazing insights with Sarah Weaver today. She is absolute living proof that taking action and being intentional with your investments can truly change the game for you. So don't forget to follow Sarah on all of the platforms. We'll have her details linked in the show notes below so you could stay connected and stay inspired. So here's the thing. Real estate investing, especially with luxury short and midterm rentals, is about taking that first step. It's about believing that your time, your freedom, your financial goals matter. You have everything you need within you to make that leap, and I'm here to help you every step of the way. Until next time, keep dreaming big, keep taking action, and remember, your financial path to freedom starts with just one move. I will see you soon.